Hello, my name is Mullen, and I came to speak to you about the importance of voting. Our forefathers and our past military veterans had devoted their lives for the freedom for Americans to have the right to vote. Yet millions go every year without exercising this valuable right. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, there are over 226 million adults over the age of 18 in America as of 2012. Out of that number, only 118 million voted in the 2012 presidential elections. There's almost half the American adults that did not use the right to vote. I'll be discussing why you should vote, the history of voting, and how it can help to improve the results of political races. I voted for the first time when I turned 18 in 2008, and I got to vote in my first presidential election. The race was between John McCain and the current President Obama. One of the main things I always hear is my vote doesn't matter anyways, and that is completely incorrect. If you are one of the 118 million that did not vote in 2012 and you said that phrase, I will tell you why that statement is incorrect. As one of the 226 million Americans, one of the main voices you have is your vote. That gives you the say in who will be running the country, which means you get to pick the most important person in this country that makes the main decisions. The biggest part of democracy is voting. America was raised on a democracy, and that's seen as one of the greatest. That's why we are seen as one of the greatest countries to live in. Sorry about that. Is that not why we came to America in the first place? For the right to vote, for the right to make our own decisions on who runs our country. We can control the outcome of our country by the person that we see best fits. There are not a lot of other countries that have that ability. For example, countries such as North Korea do not have the option to vote and have very little say in what happens in the government. In America, when you vote, you get the option to decide every step of the process from the House of Representatives to the Senate to your local congressman. To really understand why your vote matters, you have to understand where voting came from. You also have to look at the progression of voting in America as we see it today and why it is such a valuable component of our country. Voting in America started later than many may think. I've heard people thought that voting happened when Christopher Columbus came to America. To put it into perspective, Christopher Columbus came to America in 1492. The first presidential election, which was the election of President Washington, was in 1776. This means that voting was not in process for over 250 years from our country's beginning. After voting began in 1776, that is when America started thriving as a country. The president started expanding the nation and exploring more into the West. Although white males were the only ones that could vote, the wealth was not spread into the African American society nor to the women, even white females. After African Americans were not granted the right to vote until 1868, it was only a limited vote. And then finally, after the Civil Rights Movement in 1950, all the voters were able to vote equally. And then after knowing the history of voting, I feel no one really has an excuse on why they should not vote, seeing how much bloodshed and tears were spread so that you could vote. It has been fought over for hundreds of years. Now the importance of voting is the really big reason to vote. I think it goes without saying I think it goes without saying that without voting, we would have no elections. The biggest importance of voting is the election itself, and also the results of the election. It shows that Americans have the right to pick who runs their country. After all, this is our country for the people. With over half of Americans not voting, elections are not really a sign of what America thinks. It is what the majority of the voters think. We need to start all voting so we can get what every American over the age of 18 thinks the direction of our country should go. Lastly, many Americans do not realize the importance of voting, and it really gets taken for granted. As I have stated many times in the speech, for the reasons why you should vote, the history of voting, and how voting can help to improve the results of political races, the importance must be evident. The main thing I want all of you to take out of this speech is that your one vote counts. Do not be one of those 118 million that stay home on election day. Please make a difference.